Three things in John Gill's Body of Divinity that he says that the human can come to through reason and the law of nature. Gill argues that singing praises to God is a fundamental duty dictated by the law of nature. Gill quotes from the ancient philosophers and shows that human reason naturally illustrates this obligation. He points to the ancient pagans all over the world who sang hymns to their deities. The next one is divine providence. He argues that it's not just from scripture, but also accessible through the light of nature and reason. And once again, he goes to the ancient philosophers. He says, "For as Cicero observes, if a man comes into an house and takes notice of the order, manner, and discipline of things observed therein, he must conclude within himself, there is someone who presides there, who is obeyed. One must needs conclude that such motions of nature are governed by an intelligent being." Gill writes, "God, in whom all live and move and have their being, and of whom, through whom, and to whom all things are, creatures depend upon God, as in their being, so in their operation." Gill writes that the world is inhabited by the mind and providence of God, the mind dispensing and administering through every part of it as the soul in us, and that God governs the world by his providence and all things in it. Seneca wrote a book on providence in which he says, "Providence presides over all, and God is in the midst of us." They are the words of Cicero, he says, that by the providence of God, the world and all the parts of it were both constituted at the beginning and administered by it at all times. Then he points to Paul, who also uses one of their pagan poets, and Paul says, "We are also his offspring," Acts 17:28, "his creatures, his children, and his care, in whom we live, move, and have our being." And the third one, the immortality of the soul. Gill writes, "The immortality of the soul may be proved from the light of nature and reason. From the consent of all nations, Cicero says that as we know by nature that there is a God, so we judge by the consent of all nations that souls remain after death and are immortal. And in everything," he says, "the consent of all nations is to be reckoned the law of nature. So Seneca," he says, "calls it a public persuasion or belief, and observes that the consent of men, either fearing hell or worshiping God, is of no small moment to persuade unto it." Gill says that this was no doubt the original belief of men, discoverable by the light of nature. He says this idea of the immortality of the soul has been embraced by the wisest among the heathens, the best of their philosophers, Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, Seneca, Cicero. And he points to the poets such as Homer. Gill says there is a consciousness of sinning in men. Even in the very heathens, there is a conscience bearing witness to their actions, good or bad, and their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. From whence arises fears of the displeasure and wrath of a deity and of divine judgment, all which show that there is a future state in which souls remain immortal and are accountable to God for their actions. These things, Gill says, not only show that there is a divine being to whom men are accountable for their actions, but that there is a future state after death in which men exist, when they shall be either in happiness or in misery.